All right, guys, welcome back. So it's definitely been a few days since I put out a video. If you live under a rock and don't know what's going on, I am currently in Western Australia. We just had High Limit International for the last 3 days. And before that, I did have a couple of videos pre-recorded, the season reviews for Brad Sweet and Tyler Courtney, along with that video about the Rookie of the Year battle for the World of Outlaws. And ever since then, I've been trying to get used to the time change and all that stuff going on in Australia, and I haven't had time. Obviously, been racing and stuff like that. So I figured I would put out a video here today. Probably the only video I put out here while I'm in Australia. I go back on Friday. Today is Tuesday. So going to be a couple of days without videos, but there's been so much news going on. I would figure I would make a video here while I am down, especially when the place I am staying at has a huge blackboard. I know this might ruin the entire channel because it's all based on a whiteboard, but I figured this could be a special edition of the Rodman Rundown. We've got the blackboard. Thanks to my girlfriend and her great handwriting for putting this together. And we're going to go over a lot of news items that have happened over the last week or so. We haven't put out a video in about, I don't know, maybe about a week or so, 5-6 days. So here we go. Let's talk about all the things that have happened here recently. The first thing on the board, and this just happened last night, the High Limit International event at Perth Motorplex, which in my opinion was a huge success. So many fans there, great car counts, great racing, and it really showcased what this place is all about to the people watching at home on Flow Racing. But James McFadden, he would finish second in that race after winning the two prelim nights, leading the first couple of laps. Kyle Larson would go on to pass him, and I was giving McFadden a little bit of crap after the race yesterday because it seems like whenever there's a $100,000 to win event, he's always right there in the mix for the win, but he can never get the job done. This is actually the third time that James McFadden has finished second in a race that paid $100,000 to win, if you include last night. The Houston's High Bank Nationals, when Sheldon Hodenshield passed him on the last lap, and the Skagit Nationals this year, which was won by Rico Abreu. McFadden finished second there as well. So who knows when McFadden is finally going to get the monkey off his back and get that first ever six-figure payday. He has been very, very close, second 3 different times. And if you include the third place runs he's had, I'm sure it's maybe 4, 5, or 6 times. He's been very, very close to winning a huge race in his career. But nonetheless, a banner weekend for him. First, and second. He definitely, 50 grand, I think, over the 3 nights for him. And maybe 50 grand worth of t-shirt sales as well. If you guys don't know, Australia is absolutely insane. The race fans here are crazy, and it's been a lot of fun over the last couple of days. Now, speaking of McFadden, this came out last week as well, that he will be splitting time with Tanner Holmes, driving the Tarleton Motorsports number 21 in 2025. That car, if you aren't familiar, was run by Cole Macedo this year, as he finished second by about a point or two in the NARC championship out there on the West Coast to Justin Sanders. We do know that Cole Macedo is going to be going to the World of Outlaws Tour next year, racing for Todd Carlisle and Wayne Johnson in the 2C car. And so they needed somebody to fill in the seat of the Tarleton 21. So McFadden and Holmes will be splitting time in that car. It sounds like McFadden will be running it for the first time at the fastest 4 days in motorsports with the NARC sprint cars, that little trip through Oregon and Washington. And I'm guessing he'll run Dirt Cup. They didn't really specify. He'll go out to the Midwest, run some big races there as well, along with the High Limit and the World of Outlaws West Coast swings at the end of the year. Tanner Holmes' schedule, he will run the early West Coast swings, so Vegas, the couple of races in California. I'm sure he'll run Arizona. He'll run probably New Mexico as well with High Limit, and a couple of Midwest races as well. And so that's a pretty interesting pairing of drivers there. Now, the one big question I have with that is I heard for a long time that the Roth car was going to stay around for McFadden and Brent Ventura, the crew chief, obviously the pairing that just ran this year with High Limit. I thought that they would come back in next year in 2025 and run a part-time schedule, but that does not seem to be the case. So is the second Roth car just completely gone altogether? Right now, that is what it seems as maybe the case right now, which kind of sucks because they were so good last year, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. And nice job by Tanner Holmes. I think this is going to be a fun pairing to watch next year. Another pairing that's going to be fun to watch as well is Hank Davis, who last year ran 4th with the ASCS sprint cars. He had 3 wins. It was his first ever season running a full-time wing schedule and really running a full schedule at all in a big car that's, not a micro, right? So Hank Davis, if you're not familiar, Very, very good in the midget. He was good this year as well. And this is the car, he ran the car this year that Cole Macedo is driving next year on the Outlaw Tour. I mean, a very successful season for Hank Davis, a young and up-and-coming driver that, doesn't have a lot of backing behind him. And so Shannon Wheatley, who ran a car this year for Landon Brooks, we saw them make the Kings Royal Feature, ran top 10 with the Outlaws in the Midwest and made a bunch of dashes on the West Coast as well. That 45 car is very, very fast. And so they're going to run full-time next year. And this is exciting. Hank Davis, a young driver, like I said, does not have a lot of money behind him at all. And so Wheatley is taking a little bit of a flyer on him. I think that this is going to be fun to watch. I know they're going to start out on the West Coast, at Skagit and things like that. The schedule is not completely known, but would not be shocked at all to see them run Las Vegas with High Limit and maybe those first couple of races with High Limit and then mostly go run out in the Midwest with the Outlaws. But congratulations to Hank Davis for locking down this ride and Shannon Wheatley for taking a chance on this kid because I really do think he is a special talent. Excited to see what he can do at the Chili Bowl coming up here in just a few weeks. While we were on the plane flying over here to Australia, Brent Marks did mention that he will be back next year with High Limit Racing, and that makes it the 9th driver to officially confirm that he is running the series. We know that Rico Abreu is going to be coming back as well, but right now it is 9 officially confirmed. Abreu does have that injury right now, and we're waiting to see if he can make it for the first race at Vegas. But Brent Marks, I honestly don't think that this was in jeopardy. I really did think that Marks was coming back next year. The charter, how can you just leave the series? I know I'm talking, Roth left the series, right? But how can you leave the series not exactly knowing what that could be? I mean, it could be huge. Maybe it's not, but I feel like you have to kind of take that risk and see what it's going to be worth. And so Brent Marks, he will be back in 2025. And obviously he is a huge, huge asset, a huge pull for fans to come to the racetrack. Very popular driver. And it is great to have the Myerstown Missile returning to High Limit Racing next year. And we'll wait to see what kind of season he is able to put together next year. Now, another driver that's joining a series full-time next year, and honestly did not expect to see this coming, but Devin Borden, after being released from the Stamen Motorsports 23, which has now hired Chase Dietz to drive in Central PA, Borden is going to be driving the Grove number 45 car. Now, they did run together with High Limit at the first couple of races at East Bay last year. Did not have very good success. I believe they also went out and run the Ohio Speed Week, I believe, if that's correct. They ran quite a few times this year together. Had some decent success, but they are going to be running next year full-time with the All-Star Circuit of Champions. And I think out of all the drivers that have been announced as a full-time All-Star, I would say Borden has quickly jumped to the top as maybe the favorite to win the championship. You got Cody Bova, you got Darren Nida, and Leighton Wagner are the other 3 drivers that have committed to the All-Stars next year. That Grove 45 has been running for a long time around that area, so they've got a pretty good notebook. Devin Borden is a very good driver, in my opinion, just had a really bad year in 2024. And so we'll see how they go. Right now, in my opinion, they are the best car and driver that has joined the series so far. But we'll wait and see who else joins. I think that the All-Star is going to have somewhere between 8 to 10 cars at least running that series. And so we'll see who else is able to join up. Now, speaking of regional series, Ayrton Jeniton, Xavier Doney, and his sister Natalie Doney all have joined the POWRi 410 series for next year's action. I've mentioned it several times here on this channel. POWRi going to be $50,000 to win the championship, somewhere in the realm of 30 to 35 races. Can't remember exactly what the total amount of races is. But Jeniton is the defending champion of that series. We know he's going to be extremely good. No surprise at all to see him come back and run POWRi. But definitely a surprise to see Xavier Doney and Natalie Doney joining the series next year. Xavier was very, very fast at a couple of points last year with High Limit when we came through the state of Missouri, I-70, and specifically at Lucas Oil Speedway. Xavier was extremely good, was fast in qualifying, fast in the heat races, and so he has definitely made that jump from non-wing sprint car racing to wing, and he's showing some very, very good speed. So those are the first 3 drivers that have joined up with POWRi for next year. And I've heard they've already got like 12 commitments and maybe 15. So POWRi seems to be doing very, very well right now. Looking forward to seeing who else will join up with them for next year. Now, maybe one of the bigger news stories that's come out here recently is Logan Wagner and the Kreitz Racing 69K. They are not a thing anymore. Apparently, it sounded like from a Jeremy Elliott article that they wanted to race, or Logan Wagner wanted to race more, but unfortunately, Don Kreitz was not able to commit to that. Last year, Logan Wagner, let me check my notes here, ran, I believe it was 28 races total. They did get 5 wins along the way. They were 4th at the Tuscarora 50 with High Limit. They were 2nd in the Port Royal Speedway point standings to his father, Mike Wagner. But I'm not sure if there's anything else that went on there, but they are no longer a thing. They have hired Ryan Smith. And Ryan Smith has been a part-time driver here recently, running that 6-car a couple times with the BJD Motorsports. I can't remember the exact team name, but they ran a few times with High Limit last year, a couple times with the Outlaws as well. Ryan Smith, an established driver, just hasn't ran a ton over the last couple of years, so that is a pairing that people are going to be watching for next year. I'm guessing they'll run mostly at Port Royal, and it does sound like that Kreitz is going to put Darren Pittman in the car as well for Williams Grove, and, you know, scattered races around the Midwest as well. We saw them go to Texas and be very, very good. So that is a big news story. I mean, the 69K had Lance DeWeese in the car for a long time, did not have Wagner in for a very long time, and now they're on to Ryan Smith and Darren Pittman as well. And Pittman was extremely, unbelievably good at the Knoxville Nationals as well. So Ryan Smith, that's going to be fun to watch next year. Speaking of the 69K, with that news, I don't know if it was the same day, maybe a day later, Christopher Bell, we know that those restrictions have been lifted for Joe Gibbs Racing, and he will now run the Kreitz Racing 69K for a couple of races at Volusia Speedway Park during the Dirt Car Nationals with the World of Outlaws. And then the 69K is going to tow all the way to Las Vegas to run the first 2 races with High Limit Racing, which makes sense for Christopher Bell because he's going to be there for the NASCAR Cup Series. The 69K, that seems a little bit off the porch, kind of like Texas this year. But we have seen that car go to the Southwest. They've been to Arizona Speedway before, or was it Central Arizona Speedway a couple years ago with Lance DeWeese. So it's not uncharted territory by any means for them. But still, that is very, very cool to see Christopher Bell get into that car. We've seen Don Kreitz be able to put people in that car and immediately make them comfortable and make them have speed. See Darren Pittman. He was fast right out of the box with that team. And so I'm very excited to see what Christopher Bell can do next year in the 69K for at least a couple of races. After that, we don't really know what the schedule looks like for them. Danny Sams has definitely been an interesting driver to watch as far as social media goes here recently. It sounds like you could not be more on the fence than what he is right now, either going full-time World of Outlaws racing or full-time High Limit racing. Cannot get a straight answer out of him. You know, he put up a post asking which one he should go to, and the fans obviously are split down the middle. You know, Outlaws over here, High Limit over here. So we'll see what Danny Sams does. Right now, if he did go to the Outlaw Tour, he would have to compete with at least 3 other drivers for that Rookie of the Year title. I'm not sure if that has any bearing on what his decision will be. Next year with High Limit, he would have to contend with Jason Persley and Aaron Reitzel, and I've heard other drivers are in the mix as well. But right now, there's only 2 drivers that will be going for Rookie of the Year honors with High Limit. So Danny Sams, will wait and see. I would love to have him on the series. I think he's a very good driver. I think he's up-and-coming driver. I think he's got a very good social media following that people pay attention to as well. So we'll see what Danny Sams does. But for right now, we do not know exactly what his decision is on that front. Now, the second to last thing here on the board, I was messaged today by a guy that gets some pretty good behind-the-scenes information that there is a new driver and a new team, a team and a driver that have not been together before, that apparently are putting something together here to run next year with High Limit Racing in 2025. Now, what's interesting about this is that driver, what I had heard during the PRI show, that he was supposed to run the Outlaw Tour with a different team, and that all fell apart at the last minute. And so now that driver has teamed up with a team that, honestly, I had no idea had any aspirations of being a full-time team. They are attempting to do it next year with High Limit. Maybe an announcement is pending, but we'll have to wait and see. And when you see it, you're probably going to be scratching your head a little bit because it's a driver and a team that, number one, are far away from each other and just don't seem like they would just be paired up out of nowhere, right? So we'll have to wait and see, but keep your eyes peeled on social media because that could be coming out here in the next couple of days, right? So we'll have to wait and see, but definitely some interesting rumors spreading around right now of a potential new High Limit team for next year. And the final thing on the board, Gio Scelzi. He is going to be back with the World of Outlaws next year. And to be completely honest with you, it did sound like this one was kind of on the rocks as to which way they were going to go. You know, a couple months back, I put out a video talking about the drivers that were full-time with series from last year and what they might do for next year. And I had Scelzi down the middle. I didn't know what he was going to do. It seemed like maybe they were on the fence. And it honestly sounds like that was the case. But they did go back to the World of Outlaws, and they've been running with the Outlaws for a while. They've got some benefits behind them for being with the series for a long time. So it kind of makes sense. Selzy is a big World of Outlaws guy. He wants to be a champion with that series. And so he makes it 9 drivers for the Outlaws next year, 9 for High Limit. We expect Rico with High Limit for next year, and we expect Carson Macedo for the Outlaws next year to make it 10-10. But as I mentioned, we talked about this guy here, and we'll have to wait and see if anybody else is on the fence about potentially going and running a series. So that is all the news. I think that's a lot, obviously, right there, but there's a lot of news that's been going on. I figured I would try and update you guys with my thoughts and my analysis of things. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I am not going to be back to the States until Friday. I might have another video. I would doubt it unless something crazy happens. We're out trying to check things out and explore and travel and all that stuff, right? So hopefully you guys have a good New Year's. Hopefully you had a good Christmas as well. Hopefully you enjoyed High Limit International. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below about any of these topics on the board. Hit subscribe, hit like, and we'll talk to you guys again here soon.